soft like flower do. Sure, I know that your stem has a story. Melodies seem to form inside of you. The flow of your body drips soft like flower do. Sure, I know that your stem has a story.
Hi, I'm Effie Barker. We are right here in downtown. Can you say we're not going away with these issues? What are those issues?
Good evening. Welcome to the special edition of I'm Effie Barker.
Right. Welcome back to Effie Barker Human Interest. We are still with our guest, Helen Groothuis Dubbelman, who is originally from Michigan, and she now lives with her husband in Leeds. This time she will share to us more of her experiences here in the UK, her favorite and the least favorite things living here in the UK, the biggest misconceptions of Americans against the British people, as well as the biggest misconceptions of the British people about Americans. And she will also share to us her thoughts about the immigration process. How was your interaction with the locals here when you were here, and how did they regard you, or how's the treatment when they learn that you are an American?
It's interesting. I do find people are quite curious. Actually, a lot of people ask if I'm Canadian first, which I know partly because they don't want to like offend a Canadian by calling them American. But also because of where I'm from, it sort of makes sense because Michigan's on the border with Canada, and so that accent is a bit similar. But no, they've been genuinely curious. As an autistic person, I tend to info dump, so I try not to overwhelm people so much. I do appreciate genuine curiosity, but sometimes the curiosity sort of hits a bit of a sore spot, or they sort of unknowingly or accidentally might insult me based on their preconceived notions of what Americans are like. Or they may not realize that some topics that they think of when they think America are quite sensitive to talk about. So, for example, some people just kind of quite casually bring up the gun culture in America, and that is a bit of a sore spot that I don't like to talk about or feel I should answer to, just because I come from the generation post-Columbine where school shooter drills were just a regular occurrence. And so we've always been like sort of primed for that sort of thing, unfortunately. So it's unfortunate that that is something that, abroad, things that we're known for abroad. But I do wish sometimes that people would sort of maybe try to think about the seriousness of topics that they ask me about before asking me about it. Because I personally don't know anybody personally that I've, lost to gun violence. But I imagine for people who have, that is an even more sore subject.
Right, that's very true, because they might be, or there probably really are some Americans who moved there for that reason, and
It is part of the reason why I would be hesitant to return.
Yeah, you see, yeah. But you weren't treated at all anything badly because you're an American.
I wouldn't say so. It's interesting because a lot of us tend to identify as expats, and I prefer to call myself an immigrant because I've planned to move here permanently to start a new life for myself, essentially, and that's essentially what an immigrant is. And so sometimes I'll get comments like, "Oh, well, you're not like, you know, what they think of as an immigrant or as another person from America." And at that point, I sort of kind of have to ask people like, "So what do you mean by that?" And then they sort of have to confront their own biases.
I see. Have you learned British English? Or have you lost your American accent?
I find that my accent tends to change depending on the context. I will say that when I do try to like actively do a British accent, it's kind of terrible. Um, but sometimes subconsciously, if I'm especially if I'm talking to my colleagues at work, they're all Yorkshire based and they have Yorkshire accents. I will just sort of naturally seek into similar um, a similar tone of voice. I definitely use a lot of like British words that substituted for American ones. So, for example, I say lift instead of elevator, and et cetera, et cetera. But it is more of an autistic thing as well. I've actually discovered because um, autistic people, because we have problems, or not problems, I would say we have difficulties understanding social cues or appropriate behaviors in certain situations, we will tend to mimic other people in those situations. And part of that is sometimes unconsciously um, seeking into a similar accent as well. I used to work a job in the UK where I had to answer a reception phone quite a bit. And so I wouldn't have a British accent, but it would definitely be sort of more proper and pronounced and professional. Whereas when I'm at home, talking on the phone with my mom, I definitely have like my full Midwestern twang where I can get away with saying y'all. So it's a very interesting line. I don't think I'll ever develop like a full British accent that I use naturally all the time, but it's sort of a mix.
Yeah. Any was there any big surprises with the British culture when you moved here? Or any shared values? And if there are, what are they?
Well, the weather is quite similar to where I'm from, except for winter blizzards. um, yeah, no, Michigan, it snows 6 months out of the year, and it doesn't over here. Um, but I would say, other than that, the climate's pretty similar. Um, I do still use Fahrenheit as my temperature checker as opposed to Celsius, although I do have a bit of an idea now of the correlation between the two. And my husband understands me now in that respect. Um,
Any big surprises?
yeah, I think because I grew up in, again, like I grew up in a pretty religious environment, and I feel like America as a whole is this there's the stereotype about being more or less a Christian nation, especially nowadays.
Mm.
Um, but over here, I was surprised to, in it for being a country that actually does have, like, the church and state are very much entwined, since the monarch is the head of the Church of England. Um, People tend to be sort of casual when it comes to church. At least that, again, like, my experience as someone who grew up in a religious environment is, different from somebody who didn't. But that's just something that I noticed. Yeah.
What are the biggest misconceptions of uh, British people towards Americans? And what are also the biggest misconceptions of Americans towards the Brits?
I think one of the biggest misconceptions that Brits have about Americans has to do a little bit with intelligence, and I think that is based on our accents a little bit. I think the Americans that Brits tend to see on the news are sort of people who are perceived to be um, a bit more unintelligent. It's one of the more unfortunate stereotypes, but I think sometimes people are surprised with how eloquently I speak. Um, and I think the biggest misconception that Brits, or that Americans have about Brits is that everybody is obsessed with the royal family and that everyone talks with a Downton Abbey accent.
Mhm.
um, and I'm neither here nor there. uh, on the Royals, but I think people in the U.S. think that we pay more attention to them as part of our lives than we actually do. um, and also, like, there's a variety of accents. When my parents first came to visit me in Yorkshire, I think they were a bit taken aback about like the Yorkshire accent, but they got it. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Did you um, get homesick at all? And
I do get homesick from time to time. Mostly, it has to do with missing my family because we have always been a very close knit unit. And it's only recently that like all three of my parents' kids, myself and my younger siblings, have now moved out of their house and moved out of state. My youngest sibling is 22,
how many
so
siblings
it's
do you have again?
I have a 22-year-old brother and I have a 26-year-old sister, and I'm the oldest. I'm 28.
There's three of you.
Yep,
I see. Okay.
not counting the dogs.
Aside from your family, what are the things that you miss home?
Honestly, it's mostly food based, which is it's kind of bad because I know American food is objectively less healthy.
Or what kind of
But
food do you miss? Are you missing a Mexican food?
you know what? Yeah. But the funny thing is, I was just watching a Try Guys video the other day, and it was like Keith eats everything at Domino's, and I was just like looking at all the stuff on the Domino's menu in America, and I was like, oh, I miss this so much. My husband was like, it's so greasy. I'm like, I know. I miss it. It's so weird. And it's Girl Scout cookie season as well, and I'll be missing out on those for another year. Those things that's kind of hard to get, especially nowadays, because the international shipping costs have risen quite sharply since Brexit has happened. So it's harder to receive care packages because they're expensive.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. What are the favorite thing about your UK life? What's your favorite thing and your least favorite?
Ooh, my favorite. Hmm. It's hard to it's hard to pin down. I mean, aside from my spouse, obviously. Um, I have to say, I think I love that there's such a deep, rich history about the UK. Um, I going back, thousands and thousands of years. I mean, I guess that's been on my mind recently because I was just recently studying for the Life in the UK test. But, especially in terms of the structures that you can go to, I think the cathedrals here, every time I go in one, I'm just stunned, even the ones I've been in multiple times. It's so gorgeous to think about, like, going into a building and being like someone 3, 4, 500 years ago stood on the exact same spot that you were. And it's humbling to think about. So I love like the various places you can go visit. I'm a big literature nerd, so when I went to Oxford, I had to go to the Eagle and Child, where Tolkien and Lewis and the Inklings all met and got a pint. That was a big moment for me. um, in terms of least favorite things, this is ironic because I do think there's wonderful, wonderful things about British culture. Otherwise, I wouldn't have moved here. But I do think sometimes there is a little bit of an air of cultural superiority sometimes, um, when it comes to thinking about Britain in relation to the rest of the world. I think Brexit exemplifies that a little bit. But also, as someone who's a really big Eurovision fan, the way we've reacted around the contest up until very, very recently was something I wasn't really a fan of. So that's probably my least favorite thing.
having said that, your favorite things about the history, what are the favorite places in the UK? And yeah, the buildings or anything that that your favorite.
Well, my having done my semester abroad in York when I first came over here, York has always had such a special place in my heart. It's part of the reason why we moved out of London and up to Yorkshire. Um, I'd say the York City Walls is one of my favorite things to do whenever I'm there, just to have a walk. It's where my husband proposed to me, so that's
No.
nice. So we actually went to Edinburgh this last summer as a vacation, and Edinburgh Castle was just amazing. We really wanted to hike Arthur's Seat, but neither of us had the shoes for it, and it was really rocky that day. Um, I would say Liverpool is one of the places that I absolutely need to go back to. Liverpool obviously hosted Eurovision last May, and as someone who never thought they would be able to go to Eurovision because it was never going to come to the UK because we were so bad at it, and that came true quite quickly. It was one of my favorite places to be, and it was just so lovely. Um, and I have been to um, I've been to Northern Ireland, I've been to Belfast, and I've been to Cardiff as well. I would like to go back to Wales and do a bit of
Mm.
hiking.
Yeah, you hike.
Uh, casually.
I see.
I take walks. Well, they're more like walks.
Right. Got interested because yeah, I'm into hiking as well. That's how I met my husband.
Aw,
Hiking. I just met him at a hike in California.
yeah.
Yeah. So now you are going to get your citizenship, hopefully, after the ILR. I think you can apply it all at once.
Yeah, I think cost wise, I might wait a little bit to to
Yeah, I
save
mean,
up. Yeah,
right.
the
I hear.
plan is to out of my 5 year mark is the end of October, so I'm planning on applying end of September and paying for priority access because I have been home twice since I moved here, but I've not been home for Christmas. And this
Mhm.
past Christmas um, sort of highlighted that for me when everybody's all together and I'm not there.
Right.
So that's the goal is to get ILR and then be able to get home for Christmas.
Yeah, and maybe the citizenship will come in later. You're
Yeah, I think citizenship will probably come sometime in 2025.
right. I mean, you're just here. You can always apply. You're not going anywhere.
Yeah, yeah. I was gonna say I have to financially plan for that as well.
Mm. It's a lot of money again. And
Yeah, gotta restart the count.
right, exactly. So, well, um, you can have your ILR and maybe next year get your citizenship. I guess you don't want to go back anymore to the States to live.
Not to live, to see my family on occasion, and they've come over here as well.
Yeah.
And my sister's coming later this year, which I'm very very excited about.
Mhm.
So
Talking about the whole process and the immigration and the money that's involved in it, um, what can you say about the immigration process?
I think the immigration process is, to be blunt, I think it is financially discriminatory. I think I understand the concept behind the health surcharge a little bit. I mean, I'm not gonna say like I don't want to fund the NHS because obviously it needs all the funding it can get, but I also pay for that through the tax which I pay over here. Um, but it's interesting because it, it's a very large amount of money that I feel really lucky that I'm able to afford or plan for or anything. And the fact that the only person that I'm applying for is myself. because people come over here with their kids, and there's a cost added on top of that, and every time they raise it, and then there's not just the actual cost of the application itself. There's the income requirement to even be eligible um, to apply for a visa. When in a lot of our cases, all we want to do is just be with the people that we love, and it doesn't seem morally right to put such a high price tag on it. People study abroad over here. I mean, heck, I met my husband on a study abroad, but people come over here to study their degrees full time, and they meet people and they fall in love with people, and it's heartbreaking to have to say goodbye. Like, I visited my that I didn't know if I was going to come back to the UK permanently until I visited my husband again, or well, then my boyfriend, now my husband, during my senior year of college for spring break, for just a week to spend together. And it was like when I had to say goodbye, that was the moment where I was like, I need to come back. Like, I love this person to the moon and back, and I can't imagine not being with them. And with any and it's hard when I come back to the UK after seeing my family and having to say goodbye to them. But it I just think of, like, people who don't have a lot of say in financial say in the matter of being kind of separated from their loved ones over here, and it's heartbreaking. And again, I try to stay humble about it, because I'm really lucky to be able to afford it.
And okay, having said that, and with all your experiences since when you moved here in the UK, would you say it was all worth it?
Yes, 100% it is worth it.
Right. And what do you what do you wish the UK would or should have?
Hmm. I wish. Well, I mean, practically, I wish the visa application was cheaper.
Yeah. Yeah.
um, Not necessarily like $0, but like in an affordable range. Um, just in a practical sense. But I also think that um, I think particularly LGBTQ policies could be improved over here.
Mhm,
I do identify as bisexual,
mhm.
um, and I think some of the rhetoric that's been tossed around lately in terms of the LGBTQ community has been quite harmful. It's also that way in the States as well. Um, but I know that there's a lot of really good people doing good work on that front. And I, yeah, yeah.
Having lived here for almost 5 years now, and you're about to get your indefinite leave to remain, and next year your citizenship. What would you say to, first off, women, and next would be to the Americans in general who are planning or already in the process of moving to the UK?
I would say, I I wouldn't say don't do it. I would say to have realistic expectations about how that process is going to go for you. Really do your research. Um, there are things on the various immigration application forms that might be confusing. It's kind of like doing your taxes. um, um, but also that it is worth it at the end of the day. But to, you know, be mindful and to take care of yourself during that time. I think self care is a big aspect of it.
Hmm. And to women, to all the women or American women that are, or just really women who are immigrants here or are struggling, and well, however their situation is or wherever they are at right now.
I would say you're not alone. Obviously I've made, friends with people who are British. I get along well with my British colleagues, but, to seek out other American women like yourself. I'm in a group chat with, American women in Leeds, and, there's just some things that, we get about each other that, other people don't. And it's nice to sort of have that outlet to be able to talk about it. You wouldn't believe how much Costco comes up in the conversation.
Right. Yeah. I mean, you never know that there are a lot of people who can help. But if you don't say it, mention it, people wouldn't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, you and I met into that page group, the American page group, and it's
Yeah.
really been helpful.
Yeah. That's an interesting one to see. I think someone just posted like a video of like Brits trying Girl Scout cookies for the first time and discovering how great they are. I was just like, yes, I get it.
Yeah. I mean, if for anything, the page group really had helped me confirm my struggles that,
Yeah.
oh, I'm not crazy at all.
Yeah. I think I originally joined because I had like tax questions.
Okay. And it has been helpful, isn't it?
Yes. Oh my gosh. And it's like honestly, I with those types of groups with the American Women in the UK group with my group chat, I find that there's no dumb questions. Like,
No.
yeah.
Yeah, because there's always a reason why people go there for whatever it is. You never
Yeah.
know the other, there's so many people that are struggling with the same thing.
Yeah. Yeah. Or if there's like something happening in the US that like maybe your friends aren't excited about. So like as a Michigan person, like I've been just astounded by I don't even watch American football, but the Lions have been amazing this year, the Detroit Lions. And so I was just like, my coworkers didn't quite understand what a feat it was that they were doing so well, but like my American friends, they're like, yeah, this team that's been terrible for 50 years and suddenly they're doing great. And I was like, I know. So it's nice to have that camaraderie.
Yeah. Do you watch football here?
No. Honestly, the sports that I watch are figure skating and gymnastics and the Olympics when they're on. That's more my speed.
Gymnastics.
Yeah, I'm a big Simone Biles fan.
Oh, small miles, yes. My daughter, she goes to gymnastics. She's only 4. She's a
Mhm.
toddler. Just run around, but it's how you train, and I think she's interested with it.
Yeah,
Like the
I've been
gym.
watching figure skating the last couple of days because the Junior World Championships are on. So I work from home, so I have that on in the background.
Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen, for tuning in and for staying with us with this 2 hour show on this Tuesday morning at 10 o'clock. Please don't forget to follow me in my social media accounts: Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok at Effie Barker, SoundCloud at Effie Barker, YouTube Effie Barker Human Interest, and Spotify Effie Barker Human Interest. Till next time on Tuesdays at 10 o'clock, only here on Love the Beat Radio, LDBR.